Welcome back to the trade deadline special. Dale, Billy, Andrew here. There are multiple reports, trusted reporters out there, and they've all had the same agreement. They are awaiting the trade queue. These trades have to be approved by the National Hockey League, but the multiple reports are that the Bruins have traded their captain, Brad Marchand, to the Florida Panthers. No idea of what is headed back in this direction.
Yeah, like you said, it's pending.
So and then there's another one, too.
There may be another one as well, and I'm texting people.
There is a report out of Canada that Brandon Carlo has been traded to the Toronto Maple Leafs. So Don Sweeney has pulled the pin and lobbed a grenade
if this is true, right? And we're saying it because this is all happening as live and texting people. You're texting people. The go from retool to boom. I mean,
they went boom.
This is boom. So if assuming this is true, this is something happened to make this a decision of the direction that they wanted to go in, Razor.
Yeah, this is a full. This isn't just
more coffee.
Make a couple decisions on players that you're not going to sign and move on. This is. We, as an organization, are going to do something completely different.
This is a new culture, Razor.
No, it's an end of an era. It's the end of an era.
We should point out that reportedly the Bruins and Brad Marchand have been engaged in discussions all season long, as we said, an unrestricted free agent at the end of this season. Obviously, they couldn't reach an agreement. The reports over the last 24 to 48 hours were that the Bruins were both talking with Brad Marchand's camp about a contract extension, but also fielding trade proposals from other NHL teams. The interesting thing about the Four Nations Cup was that Brad Marchand and Sam Bennett seemed to become buddies while they were playing in the Four Nations Cup, despite the fact that Bennett knocked Marchand completely out of the playoffs last spring.
Well, I mean, Florida just got extremely difficult to play against come playoff time. And this other deal is done. Elliott's saying it's done.
The other one?
Yeah.
Done?
Yeah. Brandon Carlo to Toronto. So the Bruins traded two of their most important veteran pieces, two division rivals in the Atlantic, Brandon Carlo to Toronto and Brad Marchand to the Florida Panthers.
We'll show you the list of accomplishments for the Bruins captain, Brad Marchand, who has been steadily climbing the career franchise marks. 422 goals, 554 assists.
Has to be big. I mean,
sorry, Dale.
He's got 2 years. It's at $4 million each.
It's got to be.
And to go to Toronto,
that's a major up.
We were saying,
sorry.
Sort of took this in a different direction. Marchand approaching 1,000 points in his career in the playoffs. First in playoff goals in Bruins history. Second in playoff points in Bruins history. And to Andrew's point, the end of an era. He was that progression from Zdeno Chara to Patrice Bergeron, and Brad Marchand, a worthy successor, becoming the captain of an original 16.
Yeah. I mean, it is David Pastrnak and Charlie McAvoy's team now. Looking, though, at Brad Marchand, what a Bruin. One of the greats, number going into the rafters. We talk about attitude. Holy smokes. This is, again, I'm having, me, I could talk for days, and I'm having a hard, only because of these last two things coming through. I don't know if I need a cigarette or take this off right now. This is crazy.
By the way, I will also tell you, and I've been warning you about this may not be it either. I mean,
I don't know. You're right, but I think other deals are now around the entry draft. With whatever assets.
Well, let's see what they get back here,
that's my point. Let's see what assets they get back. This is a whole game of, what are they saying? Checkers, or chess, not checkers. You're looking ahead a couple of moves. I'm agreeing with you, partner. They're not done. Because they are. This is not a retool. Remember we were two paths.
Yeah.
Tweak or help or
I'm sure.
kind of retool. This is a third path of totally. If all these deals are accurate. Totally different than either one of those paths.
Yeah,
it's a rebuild.
You just traded Coyle, Marchand, and Carlo.
Carlo, right.
Within the last hour and a half. Holy smokes. And, you can't imagine if we sat here in September and talked about Brad Marchand and Brandon Carlo going to Florida and Toronto, respectively. It's wild.
I mean,
Again,
what a wild
we're
day.
talking about it from a Bruins
Think about
perspective.
the leaders, those three guys. Sorry.
I was going to say, the teams acquiring these guys have got to be thrilled.
Well, yeah, I mean, Brandon Carlo, it fits in on the right side. Now, does this mean something more is up with Tanev, by the way, or does he just add to the number two? Let's say Tanev comes back. I don't know exactly where he is. Now you got Tanev and Carlos, your top two right defensemen. That's what they need there, and a lot of teams need a guy like that. He's got term on his contract, too. Here's a guy, he's played a bevy of playoff games as well throughout his career. I mean, yeah, it could be a significant, perfect kind of middle defenseman addition.
And he's got term. That's the big thing.
2 more years, right?
Yeah, $4 million.
We're all trying to process all of this in real time. We're doing it live and real life in front of all of you. I'm sure the same thing is going on down in Tampa right now, where our play-by-play team, Judd Sirrot and Andy Brickley, are standing by, probably just as stunned as we are, fellas.
No question about it, Dale and Brick, as we take a look at some of the deals, and let's look in the big picture. Don Sweeney, a couple of Sundays ago, when he met with the media and he talked about his approach to the NHL trade deadline, the word that he used was cautious. He was bold today.
Coming out of the Four Nations tournament, Judd, regardless of how the Bruins did in terms of wins and losses leading up to today, you had to feel like the Bruins had chosen their path. When Cam Neely talked about there were two paths, and we felt that they already knew. I mean, almost 60 games of body of work evidence told you that this was going to have to be at least a retool. I didn't think it would be this degree. I think we thought that they would, case by case, veteran players with term. If you get good value, move them to a team that's contending and start that retool. The big question, obviously, was Brad Marchand. Were they going to move Brad Marchand, and what would that fetch you? And you understand a GM has to do what's best for the organization. So was it 50-50? Was it better than that was going to happen? But, a guy like Brandon Carlo, all these guys had value, and because they were having a subpar year, you weren't sure you were going to get truly what you were looking to get in terms of a return. Well, I think the returns have been satisfied because these players are on the move.
Rick, as we got set up for the shot and we're in the shadow of the Phil Esposito statue, it made me start to think this was a guy that the Bruins traded in the mid-'70s to the Rangers, and now Brad Marchand departs to a division rival in the Florida Panthers.
It's really unbelievable. The Bruins knew the situation that they were in. They don't have the institutional depth that they were hoping that they had through drafting and developing. This is still a draft-developed league. You got to have young guys that emerge, at least put pressure on the veterans. There's always turnover with your roster. The ultimate goal is to be a postseason team and a challenge for the Stanley Cup. It doesn't seem to be happening for the Bruins this year. It's not their year. So this is a big trade deadline. I got to admit, Judd, that, in the interest of full disclosure, I thought some of these bigger deals would happen in the offseason.
No question about it. And I think for a lot of people who were heading into the trade deadline, who were looking for more seismic moves for the Bruins, you're going to have to do it with key players, leadership players, core players, and guys who had term on their contract. We saw that today.
Yeah, and you think about some of the players that are moving on, and, the Bruins, the room, the culture in that room, it's a real thing. And it really started with Zdeno Chara, and the torch was passed to Patrice Bergeron, and then to Brad Marchand. And then it's that next layer of leadership that you're hoping would assume the torch. I think that's where we're at right now, and that needs to improve, because when you talk about retooling, the culture needs to be retooled as well.
I think the other thing, Brick, is if we sort of back up a little bit and look not just at the Marchand deal and the Carlo deal, but what the Bruins also did with guys like Trent Frederick or Justin Brazeau, they needed to introduce some more speed, skill, youth into their lineup.
Yeah, draft capital as well, but that's more of a 3, 4, 5 year plan. You want to be right back where you're challenging for a postseason slot next year. And I know Washington's the model. That's the formula. They've been able to do it on the 5 very quickly. The best team in the East, maybe the best team in the NHL. They're challenging for the Stanley Cup. They're one of the contenders, one of the favorites. So can you follow that? Can you do the same thing? The Bruins very active at this trade deadline. Usually you think, and GMs will tell you, we've talked about this, Judd, July 1st and trade deadline days. Sometimes there's some unbelievable deals that you make, but then there's other times where there's just massive mistakes that you really have to recover from.
And the other thing that I think about, Brick, and Brad Marchand was a fabulous captain here for the Boston Bruins, but that tier that was underneath Brad Marchand, who now assumes the mantle, can they take on that responsibility?
Yeah, well, it's been handed to them, and it's on their shoulders. And even a guy like Brandon Carlo, I thought was part of that. Now he's going to move on. So, yeah, Charlie McAvoy, this was a big year for him. He's had a lot of injuries, some setbacks, but he needs to be that not mega, but he needs to be that alpha defenseman, that leader in the locker room. He's got to assume it should be his team, so to speak, moving forward. Jeremy Swayman's going to be part of that. I know the contract holdout, that was not a win-win for anybody. So that group of players, that's that next level of leadership. That's where that culture has to develop, and it's got to happen now because, you've been handed the room.
Along with a guy like David Pastrnak. Dale, send it back to you.
Fellas, thanks very much. By the way, if you're wondering, Brad Marchand becomes the 5th Bruins captain to be traded during the season. If you go back in time, Don McKenney was traded when he was the captain of the team. Leo Boyven was traded during the season. Then, of course, Ray Bourque traded to Colorado. Joe Thornton traded to San Jose. And now Brad Marchand becomes the 5th captain of the team to be traded during the year.